All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the SLS Economics webinar series. Today we have Professor Ramprasad Sengupta with us, and he will talk to us about entropy law, economic processes, and the current existential crisis, a new approach to economic and environmental rights. Professor Ramprasad Sengupta is an emeritus professor. Most of us are from, uh, have been associated with JNU, know him. So he has worked in several capacities in Planning Commission, Government of India. He has been a visiting professor to several universities in USA, Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, and Japan. And he has also been an independent director on the board of Steel Authority of India Limited. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the talk to him. We can have about 40-45 minutes of talk and then open to questions. Would that be all right, or did you have some other format in mind, Professor Sengupta?
I think that would be okay. I think better is that we take the questions at the end.
Okay, all right. So, okay. All right, so we will take the questions at the end. You can use the chat box to ask questions, or you can also raise your hands. And
I would, if there are questions sent to the chat box,
yeah,
I would like you to open that and just relate to me on the questions. I would not be very efficient in handling that.
No, we'll read out the questions to you.
Yeah, no, obviously not. We will read out the questions. So, all right. So, without any further delay, let's begin with Professor Sengupta. Thank you all for joining.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon to everybody who are there in the audience. I would like to first thank Dr. Arindam Banerjee and his colleagues of the economics group to give me this opportunity of meeting all of you this afternoon to share one of my latest work on environmental and ecological economics. The issue I thought that which would be the most topical is the current existential crisis which humanity is facing. So in that context, while I was developing the paper, that in that context, I found that, well, right at the beginning, origin of everything I could trace to the entropy law being neglected by the mainstream economics. That is one on the one hand. And then towards the end, after all analysis and deriving policy lesson, etc., well, while concluding, I found that, well, I need to say something on the human rights issues. I would like to, before I start the discussion in the core of the discussion, I would also like to express my delight that it is not for the first time I'm meeting the audience of faculty and students of AUD. I was here as a visiting professor, I think, for more than a year, about a year. 15, 16, I think from 14 to early part of 16. So at that time, many of you, I had the opportunity of regularly interacting and sharing thoughts. And I gave also a couple of seminars at that time during the period of visit. So I was, it was something like again, coming back to my known place, as if again homecoming, where I make this, give this talk. Now, let me, uh, as it has been said, that the topic is entropy law, economic processes and the current existential crisis that humanity is facing, and a new approach to environmental rights. Now, economic and environmental human rights have in fact come sharply into focus in this 21st century because economic inequity and environmental degradation both continue to surge in liberal democracies which are committed to freedom of expression and assembly, like that of ours, India. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic and the weather-related extreme events economic inequality and environmental degradation in India. I will elucidate this. Now, while I analyze the human rights and the extreme events issues related, I analyze them and discuss them through using a lens of entropy. We are in fact all experiencing today this zoonotic disease pandemic, COVID-19, which has derailed the social and economic life almost in all countries and societies of the world. Besides, climate-related extreme events like super cyclones, heavy rains, floods, glacier bursts, forest fires have been occurring with increasing frequency in the recent decades in the natural world. This has also been marked with all such events have had a huge adverse impact on the human health and that of human economies. Now let me first take up COVID-19 pandemic. All the countries of the world are today affected by this zoonotic disease pandemic, COVID-19, which has derailed almost the socio-economic life of people from almost cumulative number of infected people worldwide has been 241 million till the middle of October 2021. And I think out of them 4.9 million died till the mid-October. Now, so far as India is concerned, the cumulative number of confirmed cases spiked from a meager 563 at the time of start of the lockdown in India in March 2020 to 34 million as on 17th October 2021, out of which 452,000 patients or people died till that date. That is, that date is middle of October 2021. This reveals highly infectious nature of the disease with high fatality. This is caused by the highly nonlinear behavior of the ecosystem and of the concerned organism and the nature of mutation of the virus and that of its growth. Apart from this zoonotic disease pandemic, which is caused a health hazard for the entire humanity, there have been cyclones, which is weather-related extreme events. First of all, it's super cyclones. India, in fact, experienced one super cyclone, Amphan, hitting the eastern coast of India in West Bengal and Odisha on 20 May 2020, you may recall, which saw wind speeds and devastation that had not been experienced since 1737 in this region. The cyclone Yas again hit the West Bengal and Odisha coast this year in June 2021. A severe cyclone called Nisarga hit last year on the west coast of India near Mumbai on 2nd June 2020. Again unprecedented since 1891. Increasing frequency of cyclones and extreme rainfall and their severity arise mainly because of changes in temperature on land and sea. Next is the forest fires. India has also been experiencing forest fires in the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand due to the dry nature of the region. And in fact, in 2019, there were 1,000 sites in Uttarakhand where there was fire, it was burning. In fact, global satellite data, in fact, shows that vast tracts of land in Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, and Africa have been burning for quite some time, quite a number of years. In fact, this is a graph of disaster events as recorded over time since 1970. We have plotted it here in this graph, and it shows that there was a peaking around in the first decade, in the middle of the first decade of the present century, and then it has started, trend is a bit declining, but again there are fluctuations, and again now as if the last spike it shows that it is again increasing, not towards it is not dipped and stabilized there. Now, of these extreme events, the twin problems of COVID-19 and climate-related extreme events have seriously threatened life and livelihood of millions of people at home and abroad, and exposed their vulnerability with reference to the fundamental economic and environmental rights. As a result, economic and environmental human rights issues have come sharply into the focus in the 21st century, as economic inequity as well as environmental degradation have continued to surge in the democracies which are like India, which are committed to political freedom, freedom of expression, and freedom of assembly. Applying the lens of entropy, we analyze below the reason of accumulated experience of such extreme events at the present juncture of history. It is interesting to note now that humanity seems to have wakened up recently and is now focusing on deliberating on the issues of both COVID-19 pandemic and climate crisis, side by side, in the forums of G20, COP26, and their follow-up meetings that are taking place these days to find out how to navigate in times of such crisis and what kinds of global cooperation may be helpful to find solutions for humanity at as low a cost as possible. Our lives, in fact, if we just reflect a bit, we'll realize that our lives are entirely dependent on the functioning of complex natural ecosystems, as well as human-created complex social systems. It does not matter whether the system is a banking network, a nation or state, rainforest, or Arctic ice sheet. The behavior of each of these complex systems is a consistent one, as their behavior follows certain strict mathematical rules. In fact, it is interesting to see that each of these systems, by system I mean the one which can explain the dynamics of the functioning of these entities and how they function, what is their dynamics. These can all be explained by certain mathematical model where the according to strict mathematical rules are applicable. The system regulates itself and maintains a state of equilibrium. Besides, it can also absorb a stress up to a point. That is some shock from outside, but up to a point. But it suddenly trips when the level of stress to such a system, complex system, crosses the tipping point and it falls into a new, the whole system then falls into a new equilibrium. I would here like to refer to a paper to an article which came out in 30th October 2021, that is recently, in The Guardian. That issue, in fact, uh, points this thing out. It may further be noted that if one system crashes, it is likely to drag other systems down. This may be in the natural world, one ecosystem, when it crashes, it drags down another ecosystem. Or it may be human social system also, human created system also. And human created system, if it fails, it would again would be triggering a cascade of chaos, known environmental and both involving collapse of man-created system and nature-created system. And the interaction and the interactive of these crashes would lead to possibly to an environmental collapse. Now, in this context, I would like to draw your attention to global circulation system called Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, which delivers the heat of tropics towards the poles. This is now being disturbed by the melting of the ice sheet of Arctic, which has begun to weaken. Now, I would like to digress here to this. Actually, otherwise you would not be able to appreciate why we are saying so. Actually, this issue of climate and the heating of the earth is driven by various motions which are driven off the planet and in the solar system. And there is this Milankovitch theory of cycles and climate, which we need to, I need to just introduce you in a minimal way to be able to appreciate the reason why of the reason of the behavior of these complex systems. How do I can minimize this? Yes. Now you see, please look at, there are these motions, we all know that the earth is moving around the sun. Right? Here is the location of the sun, and earth is moving like this, elliptical path. But again, this entire path is elliptical, but its eccentricity, in fact, varies over time. This is what is very interesting. That is, it is at any, you may think like this, that at one stage it is circular, then it becomes elliptical, then it again shrinks back to the circular system. This is how things move. Now, not that there is an elliptical path with a constant eccentricity along which Earth is moving around the sun at an infinitum over time. In fact, the eccentricity varies. It first is, suppose it is initially at the circle, then it becomes elliptical, and then it goes up to and make extreme of the eccentricity, and then again it gradually comes back to the position of circle. Now this time which is taken from circle to elliptical, extreme with maximum eccentricity, and then again coming back to the circular position, it takes 96,000 years. 96,000 years. Now, in fact, this cycle regulates the ice age which the planet, our planet experiences. That is, when the earth is, you know, at, at a distant location from the sun, then really the ice formation, the crust, in fact, begins to form, and then it reaches the peak of this glaciation, and then it reaches the peak, and then again it begins to, as Earth, because Earth is moving, and as the Earth is moving and it comes gradually nearer the sun, then it begins to, the glaciation begins to dissolve, and it again comes back to the similar kind of position. Now, interestingly, this 96,000, that is why when ice age comes after roughly 1 lakh years, the 96,000 years. So this is one interesting thing. And last ice age ended about, do you know, it is around 11 to 12,000 years ago. And when the glaciation stopped and began to dissolve, the ice begins to recede, humans found that the present topography, as we see of the planet, is what surfaced, in fact, 11,000 years ago or 12,000 years ago, when the last glaciation ended. And in fact, then we discovered what is the present topography, the outlines of the natural map of the world. It surfaced at that time. And interestingly, humans discovered that there is this soil which has been formed because of for a long time, both vegetation as well as animal species, innumerable type of organisms, which were all under the pressure of that glaciation, they all decomposed, degenerated, and soil was formed. And the soil now had the property of holding water. And that is why you find that as soon as soil could hold, something could hold water, agriculture was possible. And that is why the history of agriculture is also since around that time, since the end of the last glaciation. Now, apart from this, there are two other interesting revolutions. One is the axis of the earth, in fact, makes a conical round shape, like a top. Now, this, like a top, it is moving. And this is that top's movement being shown. Now, one revolution takes, this is what is called 26,000 years. This is the notation, phenomenon of precision. That is why, with one rotation, a season gets for 1 year changed, fully changed, as if, it is becoming sooner. Now, because the climate would depend on the angle of the earth, since it is varying, so that is why you find after every 26,000 years, well, your season as if is hastened by 1 year. Apart from these two, there is a third thing. There is the axis of the earth. It also is not in a constant angle with reference to the plane of the ecliptic. It is also changing. It as if shivers. There is a jittery of the axis. And it varies between 22 degree to 24 degree. So it is initially, say, 22 degree, then it comes to a 24-degree position, and then again comes back to 22-degree position. Now, this one such cycle of 22 to 24 and then again 24 to 22, it takes 40,000 years. So 96,000 years is the ellipse becoming circle and circle becoming ellipse. Then this top revolution, 26,000 years. And then this jittering of the axis with reference to the plane of the ecliptic, that is from 22 degree to 24 degree and back to 22 degree. This takes actually 40,000 years. Not a small time. Now it is really the combination of these three which determines which portion of the earth, at which part of at what time will be receiving how much of solar heat directly on the planet, and how it would be distributed across the grid of latitude and longitude of the planet. And this will be, so these variations of temperature, which is because of this distribution and dynamics of distribution of the heat on the planet, which determines what would be
Okay, I think we have lost him, so I'll just try to get in touch with him. হ্যাঁ স্যার আপনার কেটে গেছে। Okay, hi everybody. So just to update you, there's some internet problem on Professor Sengupta's side. So it might take a little longer to resolve. So I'll just request all of you to kindly wait. They're working it. Thanks. Okay, so I think we have Professor Sengupta back. Sir, can you hear us? Yeah.
Please.
Sir, I think you have to. Yeah, can you hear us?
I can hear you. You can
Okay.
see me and hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you. So can you share your screen again?
Yes. Okay. And okay.
Yeah, and just open that file.
Where is that file? Oh.
You can see it in the Finder.
I can see it in the Finder. Huh?
Yeah.
Finder, Zoom.
Or sir, you can open PowerPoint and go to the recent files and.
Oh, I see. Do one thing. Let me.
It was there in documents, I think. In the documents folder.
So then see in the Finder again in the document. Yeah, the first file. Yeah.
Yes, it has come.
Yeah, you can make it full screen slideshow and then probably go to that. I think you were on that slide where you were talking about the axis of the Earth.
That is now I've completed that part.
So
now,
after that.
Now after that, sorry. Now about the global circulation system. Now because of this phenomenon of at different time, different parts of the globe receive different amount of energy and heat from the sun. So that is why the climate dynamics is driven by that. Now before the climate dynamics, one important interesting thing is this, that our climate is determined by temperature and also the ocean current and the wind flow, the wind direction and the wind flow. Now, it is interesting that there is something called Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. Now, this is a system of flow of heat as driven by wind, which moves from the tropic. The heat is driven towards the pole. Otherwise, certain portion would have been desert for permanently. Now, the scientists say that this England, the UK, as we find its climate condition, would have been exactly like Siberian desert, if this Atlantic meridional overturning circulation of wind would not have been there. Now this wind flow, which is again driven by the ocean currents also, now what they do, you see, the heat is essentially is at the maximum, towards the equator. Now what happens? From the tropics, the heat is pushed towards the pole. And that is why we do not find cold desert everywhere above the equator up to the pole. And what happens, the ice sheet, because this heat is moved towards the pole, the ice which would be formed by the Arctic environment, well, that the ice sheet, remains within a temperature zone. Now, this ice sheet gets broken when, after a certain number of years, that depends on the dynamics of that climate and temperature, etc. Now, after 12,000 years, there is for one regime continues for 12,000 years, and then again another regime takes over. When this is off, another regime takes off. Now, a complex ecosystem, ice sheet itself is an ecosystem. The complex ecosystem comes close to a tipping point. When it comes to a tipping point, when this output of the system begins to flicker. That is, you see, when it will be found that the system is not being able to withstand, then just as an electric bulb, before it becomes fused, it flickers like that. Also, the ecosystem's normal output and inputs behavior, that output flickers, certain benefit from the ecosystem which we get in terms of the temperature and climate regime, they get suddenly, tipped to a different regime um, at a certain stage. Now, when this tipping point reaches, because ice sheet would be broken after 12,000 years, it so changes that the ice sheet of the north gets broken, and then what happens is that the closer it comes to that tipping point, wider becomes the fluctuation, and the resultant is what has recently been experienced, the heat domes of North America's western coast. You might have seen in the newspaper that Canada and western coast of North America, at many places, it experienced this year a heat up to temperature up to 50 degrees Celsius. 50 or more than 50 degrees Celsius, because there were whole heat domes created there. So now these are extreme events, and this was happening because that Atlantic Meridional, that ocean circulation, that was switching from one regime to another regime. Now, this has also been accompanied, apart from these heat domes, there has been fires, massive fire around Mediterranean, and North America's western coast has experienced massive fire. And there has been lethal floods in Europe this year. Glacier bursts have occurred in Himalayas. Uttarakhand and other places, what it experienced. Now, these are all examples that the ecosystems, the complex system is reaching a tipping point, and it is flipping from one regime to another ecoregime. So humans, now the Guardian article, I would not enter into those details because we have lost some time. Now the issue is, you may ask, okay, there would be some such moving from one equilibrium to another equilibrium. There would be certain structural break, and there would be certain, shift from one ecoregime to another ecoregime. But question may arise, why is such existential crisis of humanity arising at the present juncture of history? You are having cyclones, you are having fire, you are having disease pandemic, all towards around the same time. Long neglect, the answer is long neglect of the role of entropy law, of the world of physics and nature in economic processes. This has been for long. Conventional economic theory or social science theory neglected this, did not pay attention, did not recognize. The entropy law, which is the second law of thermodynamics, essentially captures the irreversibility of changes, the kind of which is continuously occurring in the world of nature or in human system. All economic processes have in fact some biophysical foundation requiring virgin resources to be drawn from ecosystems to be converted into social product, which we call GDP, which can only immediately render the benefit of social well-being to our people. However, the molecular composition, I mean here the chemical analytical composition condition of chemical compound, because any resource, right, is a chemical compound. Now, this chemical compound's molecular composition gets changed. It gets disordered when the resources are being converted into social product. And as a result, the basic elemental components of the resources. Basic elemental component. So there is a compound, you break it to C, to oxygen, to the different constituent components of the basic elements. Now they get dissipated over time. Besides this, after the use of the social product, the GDP, the product of our system of production, it would be either consumption use or capital use. Now, once this use is made, it is done, the products becomes waste at the end of the life cycle of the material basis of products and process of production. Entropy can be taken to be the measure of disorder. I'm putting it very approximately, crudely, so that to make things easier for us to comprehend. Entropy can be taken to be the measure of disorder of the molecular structure of material or energy resources, or it can be taken as the rate of dissipation of the elemental components over time. High entropy implies low efficiency of resource to yield social product, because when elemental components get disordered or the elemental components get dissipated, then its efficiency would be lost. Efficiency would be of lower order. Now, high entropy implies the low efficiency of resource to yield social product, that is GDP. The finiteness of our planet and entropic nature of conversion process in production cause scarcity of resources and put upper bound on the attainable GDP of any country. This is the reason why we cannot produce any amount we desire out of a given amount of resource, natural resources. This makes as soon as we recognize that there is an upper bound on how much GDP we can produce, then immediately how it would be shared among the members of the society, it becomes the distribution of income and resources inevitably becomes a political issue. So here comes the political economy. This is also responsible for ecological footprint to exceed the biocapacity of an ecosystem. What is ecological footprint? It is the total direct and indirect photosynthetic land and water area appropriated by the humans' production system for meeting the demand for food, fiber, shelter, industrial and infrastructural development for the humans. So all these are totality in terms of land area, photosynthetic land area. That is the ecological footprint, while biocapacity is the availability of such land area which is there. Now, what is happening because of the basic, this entropy law, this also explains why ecological footprint exceeds the biocapacity, and biodeficit is the gap between the two, the shortfall of the biocapacity to meet the ecological demand of the ecological footprint. If this is, the biodeficit is there, then there will be three kinds of impact. First is that stock of biotic resources will come down. As a result, biodiversity would be reduced. And biodiversity gets reduced through the destruction of habitats of many of the species in the ecosystem. So as a result, many species lose their home, and then they try to approach the other species' habitats, and including the humans. And then what happens? That the pathogens which they normally live in the body of different species, they try to find a new host. They try, if it is coming close to the animals, I mean, say the humans, then those pathogens will jump from the body of those other species straight to humans. And this can be also from one species to another species. The one species might be the humans. Exactly this is what has happened behind the story of beginning of the COVID-19 zoonotic pandemic. It is really the pathogens from animal bodies which has come and encroached on human body, and that is what it is entering our body through the virus. As soon as it finds in some way, or you see the key-like thing uh, on this ball showing the COVID virus. Actually, that has got what it does. It comes close to the human bodies, and to open our cells, it has got screw-like that key kind of thing, which hits our body and opens up, and then it straight can enter the bloodstream. It can go up to our lung directly, and that is what causes the different, very difficult diseases, which is fatal for the humanity. Second impact is that it leads to land use change. So there are various types of demand, human demand for land use. Now, if for one type of land, the availability is less, then what would happen? It will just change, humans would change one land use to do another land use. And in fact, one such important shift is that large portion of land is used as a carbon footprint. Now, what is carbon footprint? Carbon footprint is the amount of forest area which is required to absorb the excess of carbon dioxide which is emitted due to the burning of fossil fuel. Whatever part of the fossil carbon dioxide is cycled back to the through the photosynthetic process, the carbon cycle, and also the ocean cycle, because ocean also absorbs carbon dioxide. Now, after these two natural recycling, whatever excess humans have emitted, caused the emission, now that excess, well, where did it go? It goes up into the atmosphere. Now, how do we express that in terms of land use? Now, what the scientists have done, they have calculated how much of such excess of emission beyond the capacity of biospheric absorption, whatever is the excess. Now, how much land area would be required, forest area would be required to absorb, to recycle the entire amount, entire excess. That land area is called, that forest area is called carbon footprint. So carbon footprint, there are alternative definitions, sometimes in terms of some other variable, variant it is expressed. But here, when we talk in the context of ecological footprint, this is the meaning of carbon footprint. Now, this carbon footprint, we are finding what is happening when land use, when there is a biodeficit, then the carbon footprint is increasing because large amount of excess of emission not recycled back, well, then it goes up into the atmosphere. Now, in terms of the land use, it is the carbon footprint measure. Now, that measure that is going up, whereas other uses might be remaining unchanged. So as a result, that is exactly the main factor which is driving the climate change. Third impact of entropy law is the limitedness of resource and income is bound to result in economic inequality in a complex society due to the relative or absolute deprivation of income or resources in the society. For the some, it would be deprivation. It may be relative deprivation, it may be absolute deprivation. Distribution of income and resources becomes a political issue, a source of political struggle and tension in almost every society. Otherwise, there would have been no problem of distribution. Total welfare. Now, whenever you find that inequality in the distribution is increasing, I mean the Lawrence ratio. Now, the Lawrence ratio is that represents that is because of the relative deprivation of income or consumption of society, which can be expressed as Gini coefficient. And welfare loss, if you assume any welfare function, reasonable welfare function, then it can be very rigorously worked out that the total welfare loss relative, that is, if I am having a lower income than another person, now for any pairing, if I fail as per that welfare function, what is the loss, some deprivation I am suffering? That loss, is, if I consider for all pairs and add them up, then it can be shown that the welfare loss due to such relative deprivation is nothing but Gini coefficient multiplied by per capita income. Just that. Similarly, if there is absolute deprivation, that is, even the poverty basket of consumption we are not being able to, some people not being able to afford, then the welfare loss can be expressed as poverty gap, ratio of the ratio of poverty gap to per capita income. And then you multiply that ratio by the poverty line. You get a measure which will tell you the poverty, the welfare loss due to poverty. So actually, both of these can be very precisely calculated. And these welfare losses can be taken as a measure, and that is what the literature tells you, as a measure of social tension. Social tension. So this, how do we measure the restlessness of a society? It would be in terms of such inequality induced or a deprivation induced welfare loss. Now, I've also found that I've calculated these for several countries and also all our Indian states. And also then compared with this tension, how they are correlated with incidences of crime and violence in a society. I've discussed these at length in my book, which was last published, Entropy Law and Sustainability and Third Industrial Revolution. So in that book, I have discussed these issues of this correlation between crime, violence on the one hand, and social tension on the other. And here I have also shown even these riots, say communal riots, how they are related with the inequality issue. Then the left-wing extremism, how they are correlated. Because one good thing is that for India, the Crime Bureau, in fact, keeps good record of data of crimes of various kinds. So if anybody is interested, one can look up my book. And now I have meant in that book and also in my other papers, a measure of social entropy. What is social entropy? Social entropy, I mean a measure of disorder, capturing the totality of incidences of violence and restlessness of a society. I call that as social entropy. Now what happens? If the inequality is more, poverty is more, your restlessness will be more, crime will be more, and you will be ending up with higher social entropy. So I see that the entropy concept can have very wide extended use. Now, what has been the impact of pandemic? Let us see, and then I will be going to the concluding part. Pandemic slowed down the growth rate. You know, most of you would be knowing that before the lockdown, already the growth rate of India was declining. It came down up to 4.1%. After the lockdown, the data which was analyzed last year is that it came down, growth rate came down to, am I correct, minus 7.3%. This sharp fall and going into the negative range pushed 100 million people of India below poverty line. I hear you using PPP dollar line of the UN, which UN and World Bank uses. Now this pushed also 915 million of people, it pushed 100 million people below poverty line, and the size of the poor population now swelled to 915 million in India, resulting in headcount poverty ratio of 68.8% as per the Oxfam report. And that also pointed out that only so much of inequality in India, in fact, this is the main structural weakness of our socio-economic system of India, is that 1% of the top rich people of India holds 73% of India's wealth, as it was found in 2017. Note that what has happened so far as middle class is concerned. In fact, the Chinese economic system, in our system, the middle class shrunk by, I think, 40 million. And poor people's population swelled by, as I have said, by 100 million. Now, if you compare with China, Chinese economic system, when the middle class shrunk only by 10 million and poor population increased only by 1%. I'm sorry, it may not be 10 million, but 10%. But poor population is in China increased up. This is comparison before pandemic and after pandemic, only by 1%. Now, this shows the innate strength or the resilience of Chinese economic system vis-a-vis such shock from outside, that like pandemic, COVID-19. Now I'm here, as I said, that the middle class in China, it went up by, our middle class population shrunk by 40 million, whereas in China it was by only 10 million. Now, middle class shrunk by either 10 million or maybe it is 10%. And poor population increased only by 1%. So this also shows that Chinese system's resilience with reference to the income distribution as an impact of such pandemic. Now please note that biodiversity, now I am just coming to what determines the severity of the impact of pandemic. Now please note that the biodiversity loss created niches for pathogens coming from animal bodies and finding a host in some other animal body. In our case, it was the humans, where they would be waiting as if in the wings, in a small number, wings of a theater hall, in wings in small numbers to explode into large population in an opportune moment later. These would create condition for new pathogens to evolve through mutations and as a part of a nonlinear regeneration process. The very frequent mutations of strains of COVID-19 as we are experiencing, Delta strain, then Delta plus, and now Omicron, and God knows, even the other day I found in the newspaper that in France they have detected another dangerous strain. Now all these are because of the nonlinearity and the complex behavior of the ecosystem. That is why I began Right at the beginning, I discussed about the ecosystem and the complex behavior, complex system and complex systems behavior. Because these can only explain what we are experiencing, the kind of terrible time that we are passing through. The economic inequality and poverty due to relative or absolute deprivation of a section of population gives rise to social tension, violence, and crime. Social entropy is nothing but a conceptual qualitative measure of such unrest and violence. The fast degeneration of now about the social entropy. What determines the social entropy? Social entropy is determined by the quality of governance of a country, the integrity of the rulers of the country. The fast degeneration of liberalized political economy of India into one of crony capitalism in the last one decade has accentuated the rise of social entropy and acceleration of environmental degradation. I do not have the time to go into the details of these. I have written a paper which I will be most probably soon publishing. So then you can find out from there. If necessary, in the meanwhile, you can contact me to find out the more precise reference. Now, actually, this issue is then what then do we need to do? Short-term policies, something is required in the immediate, something in the medium run, and something in the long run. Now let me point out one by one. Short-term policies, immediately expansionary economic policies, fiscal policies are required for ensuring social security of the economically weaker section of population, those engaged in unorganized and informal sector, or those who are self-employed. Medium run policies, what are those? Appropriate social investment policies, as in a theory of welfare state says, need to be deliberately stepped up and enforced to ensure infrastructural development for health, education, and shelter, for developing greater resilience of the society in the events of such pandemic or extreme climate events in future. This is just to, for our protection in future. And finally, rise of social entropy due to degeneration of Indian democracy into oppressive majoritarianism warrants a revisiting of human rights system in India. Actually, you may ask why this social entropy in India has gone up. I have said that this is, in short, it is due to the crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is what? It is an alliance of the corporate sector on the one hand, and the ruling elite of the ruling party, and a part of the bureaucracy. The alliance of all these three to implement the agenda of the ruling order, ruling section of the population, ruling elites, what they want to do, if they want to get that done in any way. So it is this alliance, which is which should be effective and which has been effective. And this has amounted to oppressive majoritarianism. This warrants revisiting of human rights. Because I do not have to explain this to you. You all know how the parliamentary process is being these days, are being the normal norms, are being all flouted. And by the majority, there's voice votes say without any discussion, all major acts are being just passed by voice vote, which was unthinkable when India became independent and the first parliament was formed in 1950s with Nehru, Patel and other people who were there. One could not dream of such things. But now, when the steamrolling by the ruling order, then when we don't have to bother about other things, voice vote should be enough. And this naturally warrants revisiting our human rights, because what it is affecting is the human rights. And in fact, the what is the surveillance system of the ruling party. They are now having the spywares they are using, and privacy of individuals are lost, and nobody cares because they have got the brutal majority in the parliament. As a result, what has happened? There is no voice of opposition. There is no scope for anybody to dissent from the ruling order. So these are all indicators that our social entropy is going up. And what has happened, I would just request all of you, if you might have already listened to the Nobel lecture of 2021, this lady from the Filipino lady who got the Nobel Peace Prize. So you listen to her speech. It's a wonderful speech. And they point out that how, right from Philippines to Sri Lanka, he includes all the countries, Myanmar, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, everywhere, dissenting voice would be just silenced, trampled. If you beg to differ, you will be put behind the bar because you are anti-state. So you are making a seditious move. As a result of all this, it is important that there is attempt of the revisiting by those who are socially conscious and concerned about the sustainability of the development process. Now, the rise of social entropy due to the degeneration of Indian democracy into oppressive majoritarianism warrants a revisiting of human rights system in India. Electoral rights, legal and judicial reforms are badly needed to ensure the economic and environmental rights and the civic rights to the rule of law and justice be complementary to each other. The other day I was just listening to a debate, to a dialogue. The last Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who is now a member of the Rajya Sabha, he was trying to defend that he himself was appointed himself as the judge to give judgment on a sexual harassment case which was brought against him. So this was just ridiculous. This is just the height of social entropy rise, or one of the peak, I should say. Now, so that is why judicial reforms are also needed. So all these now need to have a law. Now I come towards the end. Now in the long run, what do we have to look at? Long run objective would be that we should have a condition where humans operate within the same operating limits of our ecosystem, of the biosphere. That is, we should drive our economy and society that the ecological footprint exactly balances with the biocapacity. That is, the biodeficit should be brought down to zero. Now, given the growth rate, now suppose I want to achieve this by 2030. Now, given the growth rate of global GDP per capita at the rate of 3.4% per annum, and the rate of decline of global natural capital stock at the rate of 0.3% per annum, this is what we have experienced during the period 1992 to 2014. Such attainment of goal in the time frame of 2030 would require really the global productivity of bioresources in terms of GDP to grow at the rate of 9.1% per annum, which is obviously too tall an order for ours to the nature. This is going to be too tall an order given the fact that the historical rate of growth of such economic productivity of biotic resources has been only 2.5% per annum. Now, if the productivity of natural resources cannot grow at such high rate, then the only other option to make serious efforts to reduce the size of footprint by reducing the growth of both population and that of the per capita income. But how can that be feasible? Now I come towards the end. Now you see, biocapacity becomes, biodeficit started as early as beginning of 1970s. And now you require 1.7 of Earth to balance the ecosystem, to balance ecological footprint with the biocapacity. Now, what we can do, either reduce the growth rate. Now, for reducing of the growth rate, you require change of the preference structure of society, redistribution of income and wealth, and our ethical and value system. Otherwise, this can't happen. The big challenge arises because indefinite accumulation and the growth of the main driving force of capitalism in OECD country, that will be the major hurdle. The developing countries also, on the other hand, I mean the non-OECD countries, find growth of income and job opportunities to be imperative for removing their poverty, hunger, malnutrition, and for ensuring human development in those economies. Then what to do? However, it is also to be noted, these days, this slogan is there, that those who are rich, they are not only increasing consumption, but they are making it green consumption, eco-friendly consumption. But this is, I think, all bogus. There is a paper by, I think, a French author in article in Guardian, I think 30th October issue. If you look that up, he has discussed this issue. Now, income and wealth, increasing inequality of income and wealth, it also contributes to the rise of the total consumption of humanity and the ecological footprint. So it is just not, it is a matter of scale. It is a matter of ecological footprint is a function of scale as well as distribution. Because these days you will find that the rich has not just got one house, they would have 2 houses or 3 houses, not 1 car. They would have 2 cars, 3 cars. Now, it is the absolute consumption which goes up with inequality of the income distribution. As inequality grows, the total mega consumption grows, absolute, the size of the footprint also grows. So, if you look at Bill Gates is having trying to use biofuel, but his biofuel consumption is causing so much of destruction of greenery that it is more than offsetting the benefit of that growth. Now, there are many others. The rich people, they are driving their yachts, and how much petroleum fuel they're using. There is some interesting data on that article of Guardian, which came out in somewhere more, or somebody, some French name, who wrote the article. It came out on 30th of October, this last 30th of October. The real effective solution of the problem of limiting human consumption and ecological footprint would require redistribution of income and wealth with our change in preference structure of consumption. A just and equitable economic system warrants that there would be 2 well-defined lines. That paper of Guardian also mentions this. 2 defined lines. One is poverty line and the other is the wealth line. For any economy, while no one should be, our objective should be, no one should be lying below poverty line and no one should be allowed to be lying above the wealth line. All these would require change in our mindset, our ways of thought. We require more of meditative research, social science research on these issues. Our long-run policies for development of technology and resource use should aim at optimization of growth and redistribution of the benefit of the use of global biocapacity among the global rich and the global poor. We have to make it more equitable. And that is why I submit that people do. Let even the fiscal expert, fiscal and monetary experts, they meditate over how do you now, we have done enough of economics of poverty. How to do the economics of the rich, how they can be contained, and what can be the device of really ensuring that no one should be poverty line, above the wealth line. Now I end by saying that here one may think of appealing to the policymakers to invoke philosophical and normative life, law and governance, as preached by Confucius, Buddha of 5th century BC, and Mahatma Gandhi of India of modern times. I would like to also add people like Tolstoy or Ruskin and all that. Relevance of Gandhian model of decentralized, biomass-based, rural-centric, village-centric, which would be driven more by the sufficiency of basic needs for all and not by acceleration of consumption of the rich, driven by greed, promoted by the ever innovative capitalist market in creating new ones. Every other day our advertisement for new good, new wants, new wishes. Every morning you are flooded with such new ones. And that is really what needs to be contained. That is what Mahatma Gandhi said. However, our policy initiatives and actions badly need to be combined with our genuine political will and with our intellectual and emotional commitment to humanity. Equitable sharing of rights to the global resources for the benefit of development of all. Thank you very much. We stop here.
Thank you, Professor Sengupta, for that very illuminating talk. I think it really brought around, various facets of the environmental and the social crisis that we are living through. So thank you again for putting it in a very grand kind of a perspective. So we have some questions. I think we have one question. I would request everybody to put your questions in the chat box, if you can. We already have one question. Should I read it out?
Let me see. I should. Am I audible and I can be seen?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me. And about visual, the audio is.
Yeah, the audio, we can see you and we can hear you.
Okay. Although I cannot see any one of you.
So you can stop the screen share. Maybe that would help.
Okay. Stop screen share. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now I'd like to see faces.
Well, most of our videos are off for the bandwidth, for managing the bandwidth. Okay. So we have one question. Yeah, I think you can see Robin.
Okay.
So there's one question. Will you take it? Should I read it out to you?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a question from Shayok Chakravarti, who is, and the question is as follows. My question is that this COVID-19 raised the level of inequality. Many people have lost their jobs. So if government allows the private sector to create jobs, and we know that the corporates do not follow the environment rules and regulations, which lead to higher social entropy. So what kind of policy is required both for reducing unemployment and for maintaining sustainable development?
Well, for we have to create a job, no doubt. And the first, as I have said, immediately is to put money in the hands of the poor and those who have been worst affected. Give them money, ask them to take care of their immediate life security, and also if they want to have some seed money to start some small business, small self-employment, so that they can do it. We cannot rely on them that they would the marginalized ones, unemployment problem of the marginalized ones. Here it has to step in a very vigorous way to provide the employment. I agree that, well, the record of the private sector is not at all, but the point is this: the private sector need also to be, some arm twisting is required for so far as handling them is concerned. Some arm twisting is required. They cannot have everything, the goodies of all the system. But they would have, certain heavy taxes. If the wealth line, if you want to really make it effective, then these corporate, those who are beneficiaries of the corporate business and private business, but they need to share part of their income, so that, well, either they let them come and invest in a manner so that we can create job opportunities and employment. If that is not so, then, well, you take their money by heavy taxation and let the state then create the opportunities. Otherwise, what is the way out? I can depend on the privatization, private sector, provided they behave. But the Indian private sector's history is so unfortunate. They would try to, milk both the state system as well as the individuals, by exploitation and extraction. This is the unfortunate part of our society. That is because we have always a soft option allowed to be as a safety valve. Okay, there will be no crisis, something like this is allowed. Just as in this COVID pandemic, we are forced to allow any kind of relaxation of the rules and regulations for the control of the spread of virus. It is like that. Everywhere we are compromising. And compromise also about the redistribution issue. Without an effective redistribution, I cannot address that issue which you are raising about resolving the problem of unemployment and also the problem of and actually we need to learn something from the Chinese system also. How are they being able to ensure that, well, the poverty, the poor population size does not swell that high as it has been in India? How could they manage it? Okay, any other question?
Yes, sir, there is one more question from Shrey. His question is, can you please elaborate a bit on the mathematical model on which this phenomenon of climate change and economic growth have been based, which you mentioned in one of the slides?
Which one?
Do you want more, if you want more clarity, Shrey, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Please.
Shrey, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you just, why don't you just ask?
Explain to me.
Yes, sir. I think it was in the third slide which you have presented.
Which
third slide.
what was the of that slide?
You were saying that this whole phenomenon can be captured through one single mathematical model where we can describe the inefficiency of the economic growth and incorporate climate change with one single
No.
mathematical model.
No, I could not convey correctly. The issue is when I speak about the that economic system or the natural system, they are the basic functional unit. Their behavior can be explained by some complex system behavior. So complex systems equation and all that. Now, those equations, they would be like mathematical formulation is possible. Now, they would be from case to case very much different. It may be a banking problem, it may be a problem of a storm or ice sheet breakup of the breaking of the natural world, or stock market crash, or from the economic system. So it is not that everything is going to be explained, everything of the world is going to be explained by one model. No. Different issues, when it is addressed, it can be shown that, well, I can formulate the behavior of that entity in a manner in terms of several equations and a mathematical model, which will be explaining the behavior of that unit only. And now there will be several such things which interact with each other and determines the equilibrium of as a result of interaction of all these elements, of all these different units. I did not mean at all that one equation or one model can resolve both the natural world's phenomenon and economic growth's phenomenon. There would be economic growth also means a macro level you can formulate in one way. At a micro level, at sectoral level, you have sectors, different formulation of the model. And then there will be aspects of trade, investment, etc., dynamic model, static model. Now, which model to explain what kind of question depends on the problem of formulation of them. What are the questions? How do we formulate? How is the system being defined? And what are the basic behavioral postulate? We have to have some postulate, and then the behavioral model. The model may be static, model may be dynamic. If it is static, then it will be comparative statics method which will tell you that how things will, how the model can help you to get answer to your question. So I did not mean that just there is one model which can explain the problem of growth and the climatic behavior, environmental behavior together, and one go. I need not be explaining both. But let me also tell you, yes, to some extent it can be done. Then it has to be more aggregative. For example, you look at Nordhaus's model of climate change. There, the economic growth corresponding to and leading to emissions, greenhouse gas emission, leading to temperature rise of upper ocean, deep ocean, interaction between the upper ocean and deep ocean, and then their interaction with the wind flow and climate temperature dynamics. So all these are formulated in his model. And when I used to teach environmental economics, this was one of the last topics which I used to cover. So if you, so he shows how the growth issue would impact the climate change. And the climate change again will have a feedback effect on the economy. How the economic growth will be decelerated beyond the point. It will be counterproductive if you push the system beyond a point. So this is the kind of context in which I made that. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can I also just ask more of a clarificatory question? I think I found your concept of the social entropy, the thing that you're introducing to explain many of the things, very interesting, very useful. But I was just wondering that how do you then explain the Chinese case? Because many of the things that you're talking about in terms of lack of individual freedom or surveillance are probably present in the Chinese political system to a much greater extent. In fact, sometimes I guess some of the more democratic countries are picking up ideas from there in terms of how to exercise surveillance over their citizens and all. So how do you look at the social entropy as far as the Chinese system goes? Or is it that economic development and social entropy can still coexist in a different kind of way?
Actually, thank you very much for raising this issue. This is also something which I go on thinking and pondering, that what is really the real answer. Now, let me tell you about the Chinese system as I have understood. You see, it is debatable that what kind of freedom is really required for our productive and for our sustaining and equitable social system and distribution system. So what the Chinese have done, Arindam, can I see you? What again? Your voice.
I'm muted. Yeah.
Okay. Now let me tell you, Chinese, as I have understood it, they have not. They have made a kind of implicit deal, not any particular negotiation, as if a social contract has been and been arrived at. You could not find any historical record of such thing. But what has happened? Chinese, the great achievement has been that in the 70s and before they started their reform, they provided the basic minimum for everybody. And then what they ensured, they tried to use now the market system, ensure economic growth and rising standard of living of common people. So what they are now doing, what they are saying, I will give you a rising standard of living. The infrastructure, etc. of China, whoever goes there, I have not gone visited there, but whoever goes say that they are now really moving towards the world-class standard in almost for everything. So they are doing that and they're telling their citizens, well, I will give you not just rising standard of living, I will ensure that you do not starve and you are hazard of capitalist business cycle. You do not starve because of unemployment. I will ensure that. And I will also ensure that there is a rise on your average standard of living over time, secular rise. I will ensure that. But against that, to me, the implicit deal is if I will not give you individual freedom in the Western sense. I will not give you democracy, political democracy in the Western sense. Now, they are being able to manage both these two at the same time. Because on the other count, they are very alert that there should not be slippage. In spite of the pandemic, their record of the rise of poverty or shrinking of the middle class is not at all that bad as it has been in India. Then there is another subtle thing which has kept the psyche of the people, which they would try to capture the psyche of the people, is that, there is just as there is no vacuum of in space or in whenever there is a dearth of something, right? Something else, it comes from some other direction, that material or resource or whatever, and tries to meet the requirement. And the same thing is also about the ideology. Now, the Chinese, they now had completely given up the Mao Zedong's ideology and the philosophy. Marxism is no longer there. Now, they have, on the other hand, can be no vacuum. What they have done, they have appealed to the Chinese people that we are going to give you the pride of your Chinese heritage, Chinese culture. And they have now invoked the principles of Confucianism. They are saying you don't have to look towards the West to give you to ensure the modernity and freedom. The true freedom would be you will get if you have good life and no corruption. So, and there now they have said, look, the Chinese have got a weak point. If you appeal to them, now this is your heritage, this is your old tradition, and I'm giving you. I am the protector, and I'm going to ensure the continuity of your past heritage. And then, as if that is something to them. That is something, and that is why the Confucianism has worked there. Well, I am referring to Gandhism. I do not have the time today to elucidate what do I mean by the Gandhism here, Gandhian system, the Gandhian model. I will write a paper in which I have already written a draft, in which I have an outline I have indicated. The point is this, that something else has to be given also on the ideological plane. Now that the Chinese are clever enough, what is the weak point of the Chinese people? They are very much on this tradition, culture, heritage. They would say that I am there to ensure continuity of your heritage. That is precisely what they have tried to do. Now this is how they are managing. I'm not saying the West, they are saying that Western type of democracy, and that is a because things do not work out that way. And they can easily show the example of India, Pakistan, Myanmar, right? And show that, look, where they are going, I will give you. You see, one thing people understand, inflation is too bad, business cycle is too bad, unemployment is too bad. I remember when I was advisor to Planning Commission in 1980s. So a driver used to take me to the Yojana Bhavan and also bring me back home. So when coming back, I used to chat with these people, the driver. What do you think the greatest problem of the society? What do you want? So there would have been some election or the other. He used to say, sir, two things we strongly dislike. Whoever can insulate us from that we will be in favor of them. And what? Mangai or Bekari. These are the two dreadful things which common man, I'm talking about, of course, 80s. Now things have changed. The Mangai and Bekari. These two are dreaded things. Now, Chinese are clever enough. They try to lay their hands on these. So this is the way I am thinking. Otherwise, how do I explain? Why is it not there? They resent from time to time. But they are not taking this path of, as yet. They have been very clever not to push things beyond a point. So that there is, in Western press can come and just jump on their neck, on them, on their system and say. You see, if they are giving the young and the old, whatever is their cherished things, and ensure the stability. Stability is something which is important. Stability of life. Then they have been able to manage. That is how they are reconciling the two. Any other question?
No, we do not have any more questions. Thank you again for your reflections.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Shayuk Chakraborty. I am Shayuk Chakraborty. I have a
yeah, go ahead, Shayuk.
sir. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Sir, my question is, sir, recently World Inequality reports say that India is the most unequal, India have most unequal distribution of income. So, sir, and sir, Professor Kuznets claimed that if the when economic growth when economy initially developed, then inequality rises, and then after certain period, inequality decreasing. So, sir, my question is, how means what kind of hello?
I'm hearing.
So my question is that what kind of reforms need to reduce the inequality? Because in the pandemic time, maximum peers maximum lost their jobs, and sir, environment and hello.
I think this is more or less similar to the earlier question
Yes,
that asked about balancing between the economy and the environment.
And the environment. You see, what is required is straight those who are really poor, below the poverty line, put money in their hand. I agree here with Abhijit Vinayak Banerjee, our student, who got the Nobel the couple of years, 2-3 years back. Now, I think it is, if necessary, you print print notes and give it to them if you do not have the resource in your fiscal account at the moment. Do that. Let them eat. Let them survive. And then they can grow better. So this is one. The Kuznets curve, that is a long-term dynamics. You cannot use the Kuznets curve really to address the problem of a pandemic. It will take time. Growth will take place, structural change, and then ecosystems behavior. So it takes time. So actually, we are now facing this immediate problem. So which has to be addressed by direct Keynesian intervention at a boldly and massively and a massive scale. First, let them survive, and then, if there is too much of deprivation, well, there is bound to be more of violence, more of restlessness. You cannot stop that. First, we have to take care that that does not happen. This I became more convinced after when I got that my econometric models were all showing one after another that either inequality or poverty are the major factors behind both murder, property-related crime, and then riots and left-wing extremism. All these 4 categories I tried, with both separately with inequality variable and poverty gap-related variable, restlessness variable. So that is why after doing all these, I am saying, that, well, given such pandemic, given such nature, when environment disturbance causing us problem, then really we have to, we let, and I take lessons from my econometric results. Well, try to see that there is no social disturbance, no violence. And for no violence, it is just not arranging food for the poor, but also you ensure that your rich is not over-consuming. Demonstration effect is there always. And you cannot keep the way you do not look at that fellow. He is rich. You look at yourself. You know, because you cannot tell today that you do not imagine of buying a TV or a fridge, which we could, when we were student or when we were, in college going or school going or even writing thesis. At that time, the India's level of development was such, the poverty and income distribution was such that, well, people could not, those who were my domestic servant would not have even buying a fridge. Now I'm so delighted. Now I've checked that every one of my, who comes for our domestic help, everybody has, maybe not always immediately, but within 2 or 3 years, they try to manage this by hire purchase kind of scheme. So that is good. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Sengupta, for your reflections. And I think, overall, we have really had a very, multiple facets have been brought out by you, and it would have been good if we had more time to carry on this discussion. But let's hope that we can get you back at a later point of time, either in an online program or maybe actually in an offline discussion.
When I come to Delhi, which
I
have to come because I have to get my medical checkup done. Long overdue. So about a month I need to stay, so which I will do. So when I come to Delhi, I will let you know.
Yeah, sure. And we'll look forward. We'll look forward to that. So thank you again, and thank you everybody for again participating in the meeting. There's some people had also left after your talk. There were more people when the presentation was going on.
I'm sorry that I took too much time because of the initial disturbance.
No, that's fine. I guess that's something beyond our
control. So, but I must thank everybody for their